What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to 10 Count. I'm Steve Fall, but on today's edition, I am talking to Eugene. We talk about pop-up books. We talk about the time he took on Triple H at SummerSlam. We talk about how he was pretty much an evolution and then wasn't an evolution. It's a sad tale, but we'll talk about that in this exclusive interview right now. Eugene, how you doing today?
Hi, how you doing? The best part about having your own action figure is you get to play with yourself in public.
I discovered that you competed on WCW Nitro, not as the Eugene character,
right.
but as yourself with the real name. Now, how was that experience? Because obviously, at the time, WCW was the second biggest wrestling company. Well, even the first, number one at sometimes, but yet working there. Hollywood Hogan, Kevin Nash, Goldberg, Sting, Ric Flair, all these personalities that eventually you would rub shoulders with in the WWE, but as a different character. What was the experience like being backstage at WCW?
Well, I first wrestled at the Brian Pillman Memorial Show, which I believe was in late 90, mid to late 97-ish. And I met, might have been 98. I met Terry Taylor, who was in the office for WCW, and he called me in to, I ended up doing 2 Nitros, I think 3 Thunders, and maybe 7 to 10 Saturday nights. The Nitros and Thunders were awesome because I was so young and so green. I kept my mouth shut. I had my ears open. I was shaking everybody's hand, introducing myself. I felt there was a definite division between top guy locker room and the rest of the crew locker room. I remember I walked in one time and it was like all the NWO and Steiners. Like I just immediately turned around and went to the other one, which was all the Saturday night guys. I didn't know anybody. I knew a handful of people, but I really didn't know anybody.
Of course. Now you bring up the etiquette of backstage. Every live event that you went to, Raw, even Raws and SmackDowns, but Nitros and Saturday Night Main Events and Thunders, did you go around every time you showed up and shook everyone's hand?
I'd like to believe that I did. I mean, that's the intention. You might miss somebody, of course, or you might see somebody a couple days in a row and finally it's like, okay, hey, I saw you 2 days ago, But yeah, I tried to, basically if I was in the hallway, I would just wait. I wouldn't really approach people and interrupt them being that young and inexperienced, but I would just wait as they walk by to introduce myself and shake their hand and try to somehow leave a memory on them. But I don't know if that happened or not.
So, everyone always talks about the etiquette of shaking hands, but yet when you came to the WWE, these are your coworkers. So every time you go to an event, are you shaking each other's hands, or it's like, hey, we're friends. I don't even have to go up to you and say, hey, how are you? Hey, hello.
It gets to where it can kind of be both. Like
Oh.
certain people, they will shake your hand or I will shake their hand. But then some guys, especially like the guys I ride in the car with, I'm not going to shake their hands because I'm with them 4 days a week, 26 hours a day.
Right. Like, oh, nice. Oh, hello. Oh, I'll see you at breakfast. Oh, I'll see you at dinner. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. I think it becomes a little redundant, but yeah, I know there's many stories of people who eventually became famous in wrestling did not do the proper shake of hands to certain people and they were offended and became like a whole big thing on the internet. But it's the internet, everything becomes big somehow.
Yeah, I think that might happen, but I never really saw. I never saw somebody get all upset. This guy's never shaking my hand.
But let's talk about the Eugene character. That's what we're here to talk about. Now, how did the Eugene character become a thing? Because obviously you were wrestling as yourself for so long, you get brought up, you're in OVW, you're in WCW, you've done a lot already. And then suddenly someone flips the switch on you and changes you completely. How is the development of the Eugene character?
So one of the trainers I had at OVW in Louisville, Kentucky, was the hustler Rip Rogers. Rip's son was probably 3, 4, 5 years old at the time, and he brought an idea of a character to me. His son has autism. Now the kid's like valedictorian of his high school, I think, and he's in college doing great. But Rip kind of gave me the idea, what about a character much like Rain Man that might not be very sociable, might not be able to tie his shoes correctly, but the minute the bell rings, he can do everything he's seen on TV flawlessly. Idiot savant of wrestling.
Mm.
So I pitched that idea to the agents when they would come down to Louisville. We have one come down every week. And I pitched it to guys like Dean Malenko and Fit Finley and Arn Anderson. They said, no. Wrestling's gone beyond that. We are more reality based now. Okay. So I pocketed the idea. This is probably mid to late 2003. A couple months later, some of the writers came down, which the writers didn't come down frequently. So everybody was trying to get some time with them. So I pitched this character to the writers. Oh, Vince would never do that. Okay, well, put that idea back. I saw a lot of guys in Louisville complain, and then they would get called up. the squeaky wheel gets the oil was playing out right in front of me. So I thought, maybe I'll try it. So I told my friend Doug Basham, who was one half of the Basham brothers, I said, Doug, I think I'm going to quit and try to go to Japan. But I didn't know anybody in Japan. I would have no idea how to get there. I was living at home, like in my hometown. I was a top baby face or top heel in angles in my hometown on TV. So I had it pretty good. But I just wanted to see what would happen. So Doug tells Dean Malenko, Dean tells Johnny Ace. Next thing I know, February 2004, I'm sitting in a meeting with Vince McMahon and Stephanie. Vince goes, I want to get back to character-based wrestling. And I just spit out that idea. Right after that, Stone Cold Steve Austin walks in. Vince goes, Steve, have you ever seen this kid wrestle? No, I don't think I have. I said, well, Nightmare Danny Davis trained me because I knew my trainer, Danny Davis, and Austin had become friends in the Dallas territory years and years ago. And Austin kind of looks up and goes, well, he's probably one of the best. And it was like that vote of confidence from Austin and Vince, like, all right, we'll start on Monday. We didn't actually start the following Monday, but the wheels were in motion.
Wow. So really complaining a little bit got you in the door.
Yeah. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. I tell it to anybody I train now. It's like, you have to do it properly and do it nicely and just, you vent a little bit and put it out there, and on the flip side, you have to put out what you want in the universe so that you can attract it.
It's interesting you say that. I don't know why it's inspired my brain for a second, but if you look over the years, I remember hearing a story about Bobby Heenan. And Bobby Heenan never said anything bad about the WWF when he was in WCW. But Mean Gene did. Hulk Hogan did. Kevin Nash did. Scott Hall did. What do those people have in common? They all got brought back. Bobby Heenan did not. He was back for like one night when WCW got bought a week before. But yeah, that's very interesting that you bring that up. That you just by complaining a little bit enough to get an earful, and suddenly you're in the room. And Steve Austin, obviously, you must contribute a lot of your success to him being there and being friends with your trainer.
Yeah, it was a very fortunate situation. Like I've shaken Steve's hand. I really can't say that I know him, but he was at the right place. I was in the right place at the right time, and he just happened to walk by and give me that vouch of confidence or whatever that they decided to go with it. I don't think that they really thought the character was going to work. But
why do you think that?
I felt like it was like, okay, let's give this kid a shot. He's been in the developmental system for 7 years. It's either do your business or get off the pot time. So it's like they do that to a lot of characters just to see if it's going to pan out. But the writer Brian Gerwick, who wrote a lot of the Rock stuff, I think wrote most of the Rock stuff, knew how to write for Eugene, and it was his brilliant writing that put me in a good place, being Eric Bischoff's nephew. And teaming me with William Regal, and it was a perfect odd couple. And it just really panned out. And every time they had me do something on TV, because I had so much experience, and I've been in wrestling for some time, it was easy to just hit a home run every time. I felt like I don't like to brag, but that's what every time I went out, it got more over and more over and more popular, and more things happened. So it was just I don't know, the 10-year overnight success, you might say.
I think that character had so much going on, being involved with Evolution and Chris Benoit and main event stars. It wasn't like you were a background character, because you were a comedic character, obviously, but you weren't just fighting the lower tier guys. You were in storylines with everybody who was working. Randy Orton, Batista, Ric Flair. It's not like you were in the bottom. Yeah, Kurt Angle, another person you took on as well. But I guess in at the time, nobody said anything about the Eugene character, because did you find that some fans in today's world look back at Eugene and go, well, that's offensive? Like,
nobody has at any time now or then has told me that the character is offensive. Some people nowadays might say, well, you can't get away with that anymore. Right. But I disagree, because WWE is the master of putting something out there and making it right, and making the people go, oh, I realize now, yes, it's okay.
I think that's the kind of the question I wanted to angle, is because some people would find him, offensive, but that's some people. But yet he's an inspiration, and I think that's what people are looking for, the negative versus the positive of Eugene, because the positive you just brought up, the character himself was never put in a situation where he was completely abused. They never called him by certain names that in society people would use to insult others. And so I think that's really where the fine line of Eugene is. He's an inspirational story, but yet the bad guys even didn't they took advantage of him in a sense, but they didn't say certain words to tear him down. They usually kind of used him and as a friend and an ally versus I'm going to tear you down with words. So I think Eugene is inspirational.
I found out really quickly the guys would get more heat by picking on Eugene than by either beating him up or saying something so slanderous that gets the wrong kind of heat. I used to call it change the channel heat, because once you hear that, then it's like, it turns me off. But if you keep it just, just like Triple H did, he was almost the best, so friendly and pulling Eugene in. And anytime you get beat up, oh, this is your fault, Eugene. Okay, I'll do better. But in the end, Eugene pinned Triple H. Eugene pinned Vince McMahon. I mean, although Vince McMahon did put my head in a toilet and put green paint in my hair, but I ended up pinning Vince McMahon. So Eugene was an underdog story about a boy that's achieving his dreams.
Yes,
in the ring with The Rock, in the ring with Hogan at WrestleMania.
Right.
Got the action figure, got the teddy bear, got the T-shirt.
That's the best of both worlds. Now, so you're bringing all that up. Do you think Eugene yourself will be put into the Hall of Fame?
I don't know if Eugene will be put in the Hall of Fame, but I also played Doink the Clown 2 times. And I do think that Doink the Clown deserves a spot in the WWE Hall of Fame. He's a character that's instantly recognizable.
Yes.
People have loved him for 25 years. You can put, I think there were 7 or 8 guys that have played Doink the Clown, maybe less. And I think they should all get a ring. And then after that, I was also a conquistador. So the next year after that, the conquistador should get inducted, and I played a conquistador also. And then maybe Eugene.
Were you uno or you dos in the conquistadors?
I was probably like 67. I was right towards the end. It was me and Rob Conway, and we didn't even get the gold suits. We had just black masks, and we were conquistadors. It was like, I think Edge and Christian stole the gold suits. I'm not sure.
They're hanging up. They're hanging up somewhere in their house, obviously covered in sweat still from back in the day. But what did Eric Bischoff think about? Because this man ran WCW. He is involved with Hulk Hogan. He's involved with all these storylines in the WWE, but yet they were like, hey, we want you to have a nephew. And he's like, probably like, oh, okay, sure. Well, what's going on? And then suddenly it's the Eugene character as his nephew. What did Eric Bischoff think?
Like at the time, he was 100% willing to work, and he was great to work with. I think it was almost a slam on Bischoff at the beginning. We'll put the special kid with Bischoff. That'll be his nephew, just as like a little WWE dig. But it ended up working out because Bischoff had more heat than almost anybody on the program. And then when he started to butter up to Eugene, when they wanted to get a little bit of heat off of him and get more on, some other people in the locker room, that was a way to, humanitize him almost. That this evil guy, he loves Eugene too, because it would go where we would be buddies and then maybe a little bit against each other. We had our feud and our match.
Yeah.
I accidentally broke his ribs in the Madison Square Garden. I tried to move a kamikaze crash and a roll, and I never done it before, and I heard him. I haven't done it since. I felt bad.
Oh no! Oh no! So you don't see that. You know what? Yeah, no one knows that on TV. Where like, oh, I think he broke all his ribs, but he's smiling and dancing though. So Eugene seems to be okay. Plus, putting you with William Regal too, William Regal is pretty much like the chauffeur being in charge of you as punishment, but at the same time, that made William Regal softer. That made William Regal trying to like hurt you and abuse you, but eventually realizing, you know what? William Regal's a bad guy, but he's not that type of bad guy. And the combination of you two was entertaining as hell. It reminded me of how William Regal was put with Tajiri before. And yet you're thinking like, how is this going to work out? And then it worked out perfectly. And then you two together, how did you feel that combination worked on television?
Oh, it was magic. Like I haven't had a pairing with any like was with him, because he's such a good performer. Like you said, he's even back to WCW when he was with Triple H there, or Bobby Eaton, or his match against Finley. He's always got magic about him, and I think that's why people respect him. But he was definitely the perfect odd couple pairing for Eugene, because I could just go out and be crazy, but a lot of times he'd be trying to get me back or wrestle me, but he'd say something. He's the one, run around like an airplane, and I would just start running around like an airplane, and he'd get dizzy. And he was like, he was more half of Eugene than I think I was part of it, because he was telling me a lot of stuff. Oh, you could do this, you could do this. Him and Fit Finley both were big into it.
Wow. Yeah, again, on TV, it was just so entertaining. But your greatest storyline, I think, is the build to Triple H and Chris Benoit, and yet you were used as a catalyst because suddenly you're in the middle. Triple H is trying to bring you like, oh, you're an honorary member of Evolution, and then Benoit is the good guy world champion who's trying to, he's like, no, he's trying to use you. There's even a moment where you're fighting over a steel chair and someone lets go of it and you smash Chris in the face with it, and that was like, this just, again, this is like 3 months of build of Benoit and Triple H, and now Eugene gets planted into it, and it wasn't an oddball situation, it was a perfect situation. So what was that like working with Triple H at the time, because he was, again, he's the game. What was it like working with them?
I mean, to look back on it, it was like I got on a really fast train.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that stuff starts to run together, because we'd be doing live events, go overseas, TV, and I remember all of it, and it was awesome. And I just followed those guys, and just, if they wanted me to give advice or my thoughts on anything, they would ask me. I wouldn't butt into it. I would just keep my mouth shut, my ears open, and they would just lead me along. And Triple H knew exactly how to get the most out of Eugene, but still not getting too much, and preserving the title run to Benoit, and then passed it to Randy, and that's where I wrestled Triple H.
Right. You got to fight Triple H at SummerSlam. And SummerSlam, to a lot of people, is the second biggest wrestling WWE event they hold every year. And there is Eugene taking on, not, again, I brought up earlier, not a bottom tier guy, the main guy, Triple H.
Main event guy. And the crowd turned on me. Toronto turned on Eugene. Big time. Yeah. Big time.
What was the how do you respond to that though when the crowd turns on you, especially as being a super baby face?
In my head now, looking back, I should have thrown a temper tantrum and told him to shut up and started feeding into it. But I was kind of like in between, because I'm in there with Triple H and it's his match,
right? And
he's calling the match. I'm following him. I don't feel like I need to break off into, I don't know. But it was still it was a good reaction, although it wasn't the reaction that I'd gotten in the previous months. The build up.
Also, there's a fun little storyline with you where Eugene turned heel for a brief moment, attacking Hacksaw Jim Duggan of all people. But Eugene, to me, reminds me of Hacksaw Jim Duggan, where you could come back at any time, at any moment, and do exactly what you're doing because of the character work that you're presenting. Do you think that Eugene is like universally can show up when you're 100 in a wheelchair, still doing what you were doing?
I don't know about 100 in a wheelchair, but definitely it was one thing Shawn Michaels told me one time is once you get over, you're always over. Yeah. Hacksaw, even like we're talking Doink, you send these people out and the people, oh, I know this person, because wrestling fans will stay the course and will stay there for almost a lifetime. Yes. I mean, I think there are cycles to the fans where they might drift away at a certain point in their life. I think a lot of people do, but then they come back later. They've got kids, they've got, more disposable income to put into the product. So, yeah, absolutely. Eugene could walk out on Monday Night Raw next week and get a reaction.
I think so. 100%, because again, the character is just, it's not like, oh, well, he can't do a Dragon Rana anymore. He can't do a off the top Hurricanrana. That was not Eugene. It was character work and hitting famous wrestlers' finishers, which I absolutely adored, because every child did that to their friends.
There was a part of the character that we really never got fleshed out, but Eugene knew all the trivia, all the history. You can say, what happened in Rio de Janeiro, 1963, and he could say, well, this many people were there. This was the gate. This was the main event. This, all this happened. That really never got fleshed out, but that was one idea extension that I had for the character.
I love that, because I think a lot of wrestling fans are deep and a little obsessed with the history of professional wrestling. And then when suddenly we're told, oh, these people aren't brothers. Oh, but yet they were brothers on TV for like 20 years. Why aren't they brothers now? Or, oh, Kane has a mask on. Wait, he doesn't have a mask on. Wait, I thought he was burned as a child. Wasn't he burned as a child? Wait, oh, no, they're emotional scars? Then what was that 20-year storyline about? It becomes that problem where you're like, I know what you're doing, and I like where you're going down this road, but don't try to pretend like the history of Eugene, knowing the history would have been great, but I bet $1 million to one. Someone be like, well, no one's gonna remember that. Who's gonna know that? This person main evented WrestleMania. Like, well, a lot of people do. That's why Eugene would have connected more with older fans than just children.
When they had the network, I pitched the idea for a show, which would be a game show, like Remote Control. You remember Remote Control, where they got just whatever the questions or whatnot, and something similar where, I don't know, somebody's in a ring and whatever, they get taken away. But the same kind of premise where it's a question and answer. Do you know the answer to this, or Jeopardy type game show? But Eugene didn't get that one either. Oh. And an MTV show. I pitched the idea for like a video show. They got so many videos.
No kidding.
You know what I mean? They're music videos, but also just over time where it's regular music put to WWE graphics or whatever, or videos.
Yep.
I thought, like they used to have on MTV, Total Request Live, TRLs.
Yeah, man. Of course, TRL.
Yeah. I'm a little bit older, so I remember Headbangers Ball more.
Oh yeah, yes, Headbangers Ball. I remember too. But I think the idea of Eugene sitting on a couch critiquing wrestling Titantrons like Beavis and Butthead would with William Regal would have put it over the top. I'd be like, I'm giving him out here. Just take my money. Like I need this money. Or Eugene sitcom for the network. Like it's again, endless opportunities for Eugene. I still think they exist. Hopefully they happen because I think the character is universally accepted and people will love it. But before we go there is one person who does not like you, and that's the Sandman, because he caned the crap out of you at ECW One Night Stand. And it wasn't like, oh, he hit you once. He beat the bejesus out of you.
And then someone in the crowd gave him a second kendo stick, Singapore cane, and he was double beating me all the way back to the curtain.
And how does that pitch to you? Like, so, Eugene, tonight we're gonna bring you out there. They're not gonna like you. And then we're gonna beat the crap out of you.
I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't even booked on it. And they called me, I think, the day before. Can you make it tomorrow? Well, of course I can. I'm just sitting at home doing nothing. So I go there. Oh yeah, we want him to. Here's your poem you're gonna read. All right, it's a good poem. And then K-Man's gonna come out and beat you with a kendo stick. Okay, with pay.
Right. Well, yeah. With hazard pay or just pay.
The kendo sticks can really hurt, or they can sting and not hurt as much.
Oh,
it's like you can get hit with a really solid stick and it really hurts and can knock you out, or it could give a little bit, but generally that's when they become loose and they'll pinch you. So then that's when you get the big mark. So it's like you got to finely tune them to decide if you want to get pinched and bleeding or knock the S out of you.
And which one did you experience that day?
I think he had one of each in each hand and just drummed me, just drum solo all the way back.
Like sting, smack, sting. Oh my God. This, like, I can't, again, seeing someone get hit with a kendo stick once, you're like, ouch. But you were attacked. You were accosted, sir. You should have called the police that day because Sandman took you down. But you're still standing. You're still here, right?
Street corner mugging, but I'm still on 2 feet.